My name is Jodie Emery. I'm the wife of the Prince of Pot, Marc Emery, a famous marijuana activist who sold marijuana seeds to finance legalization efforts worldwide. He started the store, which is now Cannabis Culture headquarters, and we've got Cannabis Culture magazine, one of the biggest online news sources for the marijuana movement, and formerly a print publication that was next to High Times. And we've got Pot TV news station. We do live broadcasts and other videos from this building. It's been around since 2000, the earliest days of video streaming. And we've got the BC Marijuana Party headquarters, vapor lounges, as well as an herb museum, all in this building, Marc Emery's Cannabis Culture headquarters. But he moved to Vancouver in 1994. And at that time, there weren't any hemp shops or head shops across Canada. The conservative governments in the 80s had shut them down across all of the country. And Marc decided to open Hemp BC, which would be a retail revolutionary space where he would sell marijuana seeds, sell books and magazines, still, again, illegal, about marijuana. And he challenged the laws by running a store providing all sorts of hemp and marijuana-related materials. He also ran a legal center to help defend people, and he started up Cannabis Culture magazine, which was called the Marijuana and Hemp Newsletter at the time. In recent years, of course, the movement has grown very quickly and rapidly, and that has a lot to do with Marc because he sold marijuana seeds and he used all the money to finance legalization efforts. He started the BC Marijuana Party to run in the provincial election and had a full slate of candidates and put $250,000 towards that. He made millions of dollars selling seeds and financed other efforts like ballot initiatives in the United States, where a lot of medical marijuana laws were funded by him giving money to it. The biggest US marijuana lobby group, Marijuana Policy Project, got money from him in the early days when they were going to shut down. So Marc used marijuana seed sales to finance activism because he knew the government takes your money through taxation and they use it to punish us. They use it to punish people and put them in prison, and we need money to finance any sort of attack back against it. We have to finance our fight for freedom with something, and he chose marijuana seeds. And in 2005, a surprise to us all, July 29th, we had the store downstairs was raided by Vancouver police and US Drug Enforcement Administration officers with masks and weapons. Marc was arrested in Nova Scotia, out east in Canada, where he was speaking, or set to speak, at a medical marijuana rally. He was arrested at a restaurant and nobody knew where he was, and we were panicked here when we couldn't get a hold of him. And it was a significant blow, and that's what the DEA said in their document, the press release that day, that it was Marc's arrest was a significant blow to the legalization movement, that there was one less pot of money for the movement to rely on, that Marc was the leader of a legalization movement. It didn't even mention seeds once. It was all about the money, about Cannabis Culture magazine, about him being a leader and financing change and being successful at it. And for that, he was facing extradition to the United States and a mandatory minimum of 30 years to life in prison. So Marc was finally extradited in May 2010. After years of trying to get a good deal. We got 5 years for him on one charge of manufacturing marijuana, and his two co-accused, Greg Williams and Michelle Rainey, both got no prison time. Unfortunately, Michelle Rainey passed from cancer, which she had been using marijuana to fight. After many years of suffering from Crohn's disease, she was facing life in prison as well, but thankfully was able to spend the last of her days free from bondage in the US. But Greg is still here with us for Pot TV, and Marc is 2/3 done his sentence. He's set to come home in July 2014, or hopefully sooner, at the end of this year or early next year, if he gets transferred by the government. Technically, selling marijuana seeds is illegal in Canada, and it has to be against the law in both countries to be an extraditable offense. So it is an extraditable offense, but nobody saw that coming. And in fact, two people have been charged before with marijuana seed sales. One of them got a $200 fine and the other got 2 months probation. And those guys had money and marijuana and gold bars and motorcycles and all the trappings of a drug dealer type lifestyle because they were just in it to make money. Marc had none of that. He had nothing to his name, no property, stocks, bonds, savings, nothing at all, because he's never been a material person. He's always been a man of principle and wanted to finance his various fights for freedom. We have pretty much a good solid case showing that Marc was initially supposed to be charged here in Canada, and that was rejected, and they sold him out to a foreign country he never went to suffer punishment far worse than what he would have gotten here. In the US, they have states' rights, and the states have authority over how they govern with their drug laws and all sorts of different issues, where here in Canada, we've got federal drug laws, and those apply within the provinces. Provinces can only change how they enforce those laws, and that's why we've got a referendum process here in BC to try and change the way that our police enforce the marijuana possession laws, but that's as much as we can do. In the US, they were able to start passing medical marijuana initiatives, and these amend constitutions. They become law in a way that affects only the state. And there's always a conflict between states' rights versus federal rights where the laws may come into conflict. And we've seen, though, that despite the federal government, and even more so under Obama, continuing to persecute people for medical marijuana use and distribution and production, we've seen more and more states adopt medical marijuana laws. It went from 0 to more than 18. I believe it might be 20 even now after the last election. And you've also got over 11 states, it might be 14 states, have decriminalization. And neither medical marijuana or decrim address the issue of marijuana prohibition. But both of them have helped advance it so far that we've been able to get 2 states to pass legalization. You always have different laws being changed by people over time. So that's what we're going to continue to do, is educate and inform people about prohibition and the different types of ways you can address it. And most importantly, by stopping the arrests and stopping the imprisonment. That's number 1. We have a terrible parliament structure that allows for a minority vote to get in a majority government that can pass any law at any time without any opposition to it at all. We've got a form of friendly fascism in Canada that doesn't exist in the US. Our Prime Minister has more power over what happens in this country than Obama does over his own country. I'm going to be making sure that marijuana prohibition is not ignored during this election. Our Premier has a responsibility to speak out, because our next door neighbor, who shares a long border with us, just legalized pot in Washington State. We've got to talk about what we're going to do here. We've got to talk about what to tell the federal government. And Sensible BC is the referendum campaign that we're promoting here. So we can't legalize it as a province the way that a state can legalize it, but we can tell our police how to enforce the laws. Because even if we win, even if we succeed, there's always going to be prohibitionists out there trying to reverse it. We're always going to have enemies who don't like marijuana and who want to put people in prison for it, and they're not going to give up their fight, just like we're not going to give up our fight.
What can people do to get involved, or what sort of advice might you have for people?
You could run for office, you could support a candidate, you could organize an event, a community center in your town. Figure out what you can afford to do, figure out what you're safe doing, and try and stay in that area and do as much as possible. Because as I keep learning, one person can't do everything, but everyone can do something.